Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the TED Show. Always an honor to have my friend, Orlando Commissioner, District 3 Commissioner Robert Stuart on the show. We're going to talk about what it even means to be a commissioner. We're going to get an update on Ian and all of the stuff that the city is doing to make our lives go back to normal. And of course, we're going to hear about what's going on in District 3. Welcome back, Commissioner Stuart. How are you today?
Thank you, Ted. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm always love spending time with you. Thanks a lot.
Me too. I always love spending time with you. You do so much in the community. Your family has done so much in the community for so many years. So I'd love for the audience to get that origin story. Give us a little bit of 411 on Commissioner Stuart and how you kind of got being in the community to be working as a public servant in the community.
Well, I never expected to do that. Dad came here in 1928 and then moved to South Florida, came back up in 1938. So we've been in the community for 80, 90 years. We're kind of newcomers to some of the people that are here. But my brother George was involved in politics in the city of Orlando and the state level. Jacob is involved in the business community side with the chamber. And then and Charlie was involved, and then we were taught from our father's standpoint, and especially his leadership, that if you're going to be in a community, you got to figure out how to give back. And so this is our way to giving back. And so 2005, I got crazy and decided to run for city council because I didn't like the direction things were going, and figured if it's not somebody else, it might as well be me. So I jumped in and now I've just completed last year my 5th election. Wow. Serving for when this is thrill, I'll serve for 20 years as city commissioner. So I'm excited about that.
It's actually, I feel like people think that it's all politics, but in reality, you really do have to have a servant's heart to do what you do, what anybody who's an elected official has to do. I think it is a lot of sacrifice that people don't realize. So kudos to you and to the whole Stewart family. You guys are enmeshed in the city and the county and just giving back. That's what I think of when I think of your family and all that you do. Tell us about being a commissioner. We were talking before we went live that a lot of people do the eeny, meeny, miny, mo on the election ballot. They're not really sure what a commissioner does. But they know they need to vote for one because it's on the form. So educate us a little bit. Give us the basics of what you do as a city commissioner.
Well, I have tried to simplify it. Orlando City Commissioners, we're elected on an off year. We're elected on the odd years, and we're split up between 3 and 3, and then of course the mayor runs independently. So we're not on this ballot right now, and the next election is in 2023 for the mayor and 3 other commissioners. I have tried to, as hard as I can, understand what my role is, and people want me to do something that's oftentimes not my role. So my role is policy and advocacy. Let's just make it real simple. It's not management. So what people want me to do is they want me to manage this process, especially with Hurricane Ian and what's occurred. They want me to manage this process. I'm not elected to be a manager. There's another whole question about that. I'm elected to advocate on your behalf and elected to help with policy, which is the lawmaking portion of what we do. So those 2 things have come to us at a regular basis. Orlando, as much as we try to figure out, Orlando really has kind of 2 core missions. One is public safety and the other is land management. And so we do a lot in land management, which is zoning and purchasing and replatting and all the rest of that stuff. And then the other part is public safety for Orlando. And that's police, fire, EMT. That's really kind of the core. And kind of everything falls into one of those 2. And so I try to compartmentalize that. I did that early on because I actually had another career. I spent 25 years at the Christian Service Center as executive director. So I had to figure out kind of what role am I going to play. And oftentimes, as you know, your job expands to fill the amount of time you want to commit to it. So early on, I didn't have that amount of time. It's okay, then this is my role. And so you end up with this kind of where we are. Hurricane Ian comes through and people are screaming and yelling, want me to run out and go fix their electricity. And I'm not good at that. I can change an outlet at home, but that's about as far as I can get. And so they perceive that it's management. And that's really where the rub comes, because oftentimes in dealing with a commissioner, I am the closest elected official to them. Yes. So they've got nobody else to scream and yell at. And I understand it. It grates on me sometimes, but I understand they haven't got any place else to go.
That's true.
And so my task is to help get them to the right spot as an advocacy standpoint, and advocate for them to be not only served, but also advocate for them that remember that the city staff work for them as much as they work for me. Our city is designed. I apologize for the civics lesson, but
I love the civics lesson. No, seriously, I'm glad you're doing that, because I get so many questions and there are things I don't know how to explain. I think it's so important for people to be educated on how it all works. We don't really teach civics much anymore. And so there's things that are missed out on understanding how local government works and the advocacy part. So please continue. I love it.
Every government works a little bit differently, but Orlando works this way. There's 3,400 people that work for the city of Orlando. All of them but six work for the mayor. In the city of Orlando, we elect our CEO, which is the mayor of Orlando. He is our city manager, if you want to call it that. In Orange County, the mayor of Orange County is the city manager. In Apopka, they hire a city manager to run it, and the city manager reports to the mayor, but the city manager runs it and the mayor handles policy and advocacy because they hired somebody to run it. There's 84 jurisdictions in our Central Florida area. Only 2 actually hire their manager in terms of a vote. That's the city of Orlando and Orange County. And so 6 people don't work for the mayor. Those are 6 elected officials. Even my staff works for the mayor of Orlando. And if he wants to go and fire my staff tomorrow, he's got every legal right in the world to do it. And I can't. Now, not a good move politically, but my staff works for the clerk. The clerk works for the chief of staff, and the chief of staff works for the mayor. So it's just that simple. I often get, as you would imagine, especially during a hurricane like we've just gone through, if somebody calls me and says, go tell somebody to go do something, go tell the chief to do that, or go tell. And I have to say as kindly, I can't tell anybody to do anything. They don't work for me. My task, like a member of the House of Representatives, is to make sure they have the money allocated for them to do their job. It would be as if you didn't like what was going on in Afghanistan and you were going to call Val Demings and say, Val, go tell the general to stop it. And you go, I would never do that. That's not Val's job. Val's job is to say, Val, he'd say his job, don't give them money.
Right.
They don't have money, they can't do what they want them to do. We are very similar in that aspect. And so police ask us for money. We take the city budget. We approve that city budget. That's part of the task of policy. And then from that standpoint, we make sure they have the resources that they need. If they need more resources, then come to the city council and let's figure out how to get the resources. But I don't tell the police chief to do anything. As I tell people, he's got a weapon. I don't get anybody with a weapon.
I would not mess with that at all. So tell them what where District 3 covers, and then let's talk about the Ian relief efforts, because there's a lot going on. Orlando, I feel like, got flooded much more than I've ever seen in a hurricane scenario since I've lived here, and it just, I think a lot of people are still underwater. And so I'd love just an update on, first of all, what District 3 is, who you cover, and not that you don't cover the whole city, but you do have constituents that are in District 3. And then what kind of Ian relief efforts are you seeing?
Well, let me give you a couple. The first is my district. Orlando's formed a little bit like a 5-legged table. The area above the tabletop would be District 3. It really covers almost everything north of Highway 50. The Highway 50, we don't cover parts of Colonial Town and parts of Mercy, but everything else from Rosemont to College Park to Audubon Park to Baldwin Park, almost everything in between belongs to District 3. It's, as I tease, it's 50,000 of my closest friends. Um, but Ian, I think, is an interesting part. Now, I preface it by saying this: there's 120 lakes. I shouldn't say that. Prior to Ian, there's 120 lakes in our town. There may be other lakes that have been created, but we have a very sound system. The governor called this a 500-year storm. I don't think he's right. I think it's probably a 50 or 60-year storm. The last similar storm like this was Hurricane Donna about 70 years ago. 60 years ago. So you end up with kind of an event, 14 inches of rain. The problem that this community had was that when Ian goes through, it's not just this strip that goes through. In this case, it was a 200-mile wide strip, and everybody got the same amount of rain. So typically when Hurricane Charlie came through, we got 12 inches of rain. But you didn't have rain in Brevard County, or you didn't have rain in edges of Lake County or parts of Marion County. So when the water dissipated, it went to places that they could take the water. In our case, you had rain effectively from Delray Beach going across all the way up to the edge of Tallahassee. And so there was no place for the water to go. And so we just have to wait for it to recede. We got 14 inches of rain in one day, the second highest total in a 12-hour time period we've ever recorded. Amazing. We've only been recording since 1900. But at the same time, over the course of you can imagine if this were a 50-year storm, what would be a 100-year storm?
Right.
A 500-year storm. 500-year storm would put us all underwater. Right. As far as the relief efforts, let me just start with this. Anybody who needs any help in the city of Orlando starts with Orlando.Gov/Ian, IAN. Get to that page. That will lead you through everything from what's the latest information about water to how to get to FEMA, how to get to Orange County, how to get to the state, whatever it may be. Orlando.Gov/Ian. There's other websites out there. You can get to them all in Orlando by going there. Okay. Our system has done a pretty good job. I am, in many ways, I'm very impressed with the fact that we kind of all got through it. There are large areas that are still having challenges with electricity because we can't get electrical utility trucks in because they're still underwater, and you obviously don't want to deal with overhead wires if you're standing in water. But according to the last record, about 98 to 99% of everybody in Orlando have been recharged by OUC. The wastewater system has taken a great deal of stress on it. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the entire system was working at about 120% capacity, and that's hard for us to do. And so we were trying to move water as fast as possible. Much of that was that some water got into the wastewater system through groundwater. We found those, and then we have tried to since solve that problem. In the northwest quarter, we had some issues. Well, those should be solved in the course of the next 12 to 24 hours. And then we're going to kind of essentially be a little bit back to normal, if you want to call it that, as best as you can. Although I think real normal will be probably 3 or 4 weeks down the road when most of the water recedes.
It's just, I think that we all expected we're used to the wind and we're used to some rain, but I think a lot of people were completely caught off guard with the flooding.
Yeah.
And I think that we just did not, even if you survived or went through Charlie, you just really didn't expect the areas to be as flooded as they were. Yeah. And that's why people have to take heed when the warnings come out and when we have all the emergency services people come on and tell you what's happening and what you need to do and how you need to protect yourself and your home and your loved ones. And so those are so critical, but we tend to turn a deaf ear here in Orlando because we think we're central and it's not going to impact us the way it has. So if you didn't live through Charlie, you don't necessarily know that. You think it was just over exaggerated. And I can tell you completely different storms as far as I'm concerned. But I feel like the impact was felt so much more widespread, like you said.
Absolutely. And what we have learned, what people have learned, and they will learn in the next couple of weeks, is they've learned Geology 101. They've learned that Orlando is at the highest point in the Central Florida area. All the water flows away from Orlando. But the challenge is if there's no place for the water to go, then it stays and stands. But Orlando has got really 4 what's called watersheds. One goes northeast to St. John's, one goes southeast to the Kissimmee River, and then there's 2 that go to the west. If there's no place for water to go, it will stand. I mean, water will just stand. And then because of the heavy rains, which is one of the challenges people don't realize, there have heavy rains in late August and September. The water, the groundwater was up and the ground was saturated. And so there wasn't a place, typically a large portion of water will percolate. There was no place for the water to percolate. So it had to flow. And that is frustrating, and I understand it. And I try to be as sympathetic as possible, understanding that there's a lot of people, I say this in a nice way, it could have been a whole lot worse. That storm if that storm had stayed on us and decided that it's just it liked Orlando and it was going to be another day, we will all be swimming to work. Lake Davis was underwater. Lake Cherry, the neighborhood was underwater. Lake Eola, the water was had risen up to the stage of the
never seen it like that.
Theater. And a lot of these things where you get an inch and a half in an afternoon, and we all kind of complain and gripe about it. I promise you, we won't do that again, because we will understand how important it is that this water gets moved and gets handled. But you got a system that's on 4 hours at 3 or 4 inches of water in a day at max. Now it gets 14, so water gets backed up.
And heed the warnings. I mean, there's this. We're still in hurricane season, so you keep an eye on that. Listen to the warnings that go out. Pay attention when local elected officials come on, emergency services come on. That we're gearing up for something, preparing for something. And how much better is it to be over prepared, if there is such a thing, than to expect to just have your good old fashioned hurricane party and wing through it. This is definitely one that a lot of people thought that's how it would be, and yet they are still either trapped in their neighborhoods because the water has not receded yet.
Well, let me share these resources again. Orlando.Gov/Ian. And if you live in Orlando and you need help, you can call 407-246-HELP. I forget, it's 43 something. I never remember the numbers, but 407-246-HELP. And that will get you to our Emergency Operations Center. If you see a tree down, if you see a road that's washed out, if you see things that you want to tell somebody about that's related to the storm, send it there. If you have a safety issue, always call 911.
Yes.
But we're trying to get our resources out as fast as possible across the board, so that we can get back to normal as soon as possible. So, all righty.
All right. Commissioner Stuart, always a pleasure to have you on. Again, you can go to Orlando.Gov/Ian if you need help. You can also call the phone number 407-246-HELP, I believe.
Yep.
And then you can also go, if you ever want to check out what our commissioner is up to in District 3, you can go to Orlando.Gov/District 3. Thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for all you do in our community, my friend. I appreciate you. And everybody who's a public servant, you're out there doing a lot of work and advocacy. I love how you term that, because that's what you do. And we need to get more educated on the things that you can and cannot do, and that way we can be more impactful of our requests.
Remember those that are first responders, the utility workers, the guys that are cutting trees. They are doing yeoman's work, and I am so grateful for them, especially in the city of Orlando. But so grateful for them because now I think our community will focus on what we can do for Fort Myers.
Yes,
which is the right thing to do. Let's get, now that we're settled, what can we do to help them? Which is the most important thing I think the communities do to help one another. So great. Ted, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for being on the show. Orlando.gov/Ian, also Orlando.gov/District 3. Commissioner Stuart is there. He might not be able to get done what you want him to because it's not in the parameters or the boundaries of what he does, but he will certainly be an ear and can direct you to where you need to get. Thank you so much, Brother Stuart. Appreciate you. Guys, we'll be back. Get involved. Learn what your government does so that you can get more active and have them be more impactful for what you want done in your community. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Stay safe, everybody.